A lot of our opportunities are either ones who the EBITDA doesn't fit the equipment, where we find out the equipment and real estate is actually worth more than the company as a whole. Even with an EBITDA that's good, you have enough value in the equipment and the machinery and the building, you can sell more for that. Or a lot of times if they realize, let's say they have 4 plants and there's a lot of redundance, they might sell off one of the 4 plants and keep three running because it can serve all of their customers, but they don't need the 4th plant.
In this week's episode, we have Jason Levy of the Levy Recovery Group. They are experts in the equipment industry. They focus on both specialized and non-specialized equipment. The best way to engage these guys is through a liquidation, mergers and acquisitions, whether you're downsizing or maybe even just trying to offload some idle equipment that's sitting there in the back corner getting dusty. One of the key things we talk about in this episode is the importance of getting in an expert that understands the industry. But not only with that, we also want to make sure that you give them enough time to do what they need to do. By allowing them to have time to market the product, they're going to get you top dollar. And with that, enjoy the episode. And this is the Cashflow Chronicles Open Forum.
Yeah, Jason, thank you so much for joining us here on the Cashflow Chronicles. I think you have some interesting insights. I think people don't realize the value of what you do in the marketplace. And I think it's really cool to talk a little bit more about what you're seeing in the marketplace when it comes to just liquidating assets. I know there's a lot of companies that have inventory, selling it to the greatest value is something that many people don't understand necessarily. Would you say that's a safe assumption?
First of all, thank you both for having me here. I think this is a great opportunity. So to answer your question, I think a lot of people do is they don't think of it in the time frame. They think it can happen quickly. So the best way to maximize revenue in our world is give us the time to do the process correctly. What I mean by that is it takes you time to find the buyer, time to do the process. So in our ideal world, we like to do 6 to 8 weeks from start to finish. Obviously, timing is sometimes doesn't allow that to happen based on rent, based on production ending, etc. But in the real world, we love 8 weeks from start to finish.
So as a part of that is like amortization as far as planning through the accounting cycle. Hey, we want to end date this potential machine a year from now. Is that a real life scenario at times?
That would be the dream. What normally happens is a guy gets a checklist, and the last thing on his checklist is to get rid of the machinery. So you've got to find new production, find a new machine to replace it, down the check line. And then the last thing is to get rid of it. Because for an example, the reason why it takes that much time is if you put a machine on the market, the person who wants to buy it has to first find it, make sure his engineering team thinks if it's appropriate. And the bigger problem is you gotta get the financing to buy the equipment. If we're talking about anything with a major value, right? Most companies aren't sitting around with $1 million in the bank just saying, oh, I'm waiting to spend it. They either have to go to the bank to get a loan or get the financing, however they're gonna do it, to pay for it.
So it kind of makes sense, 6 to 8 weeks, right? Because with a bank, it's going to take at least 3 to 4 to try to get the financing lined up too.
Correct.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And I guess the question, because this isn't my world from the world of machinery. So do some companies say, hey, we need this machine, we'll shop it from the used marketplace, see what becomes available, or versus buying new? Is that a real life scenario that happens?
That's correct. A lot of times it's driven by contracts. So some companies get a contract that has to move quickly, and then they're stuck either buying new or scrambling. Most guys have a bit of process, and they say, okay, if I win this project, I'm going to need 7 machines. They start the process when the contract starts, or the bidding process starts. And that way, at that point, they can get the machinery. There's a contract out when 4 guys call you on the same machine. You go, oh, are you bidding on a project at Ford? How do you know that? Because the 3 competitors call me for the same machine, and you're all waiting for the one. Whoever wins is going to call me.
So let me ask, if somebody has a new contract, right, is it possible that they're going to come to you to try to find a used piece and mix it with a combination of a new piece too?
Correct.
Okay, so you'll help could you help them procure a new piece of equipment too, or are you really focusing on trying to find that used piece?
We're focused on used.
Okay.
I mean, we have vendors who do new, so they call me, I will help them. But I don't add much value to this.
So, hey, I need 4 CNC machines. I only got 2.
But there'll be enough out there in the marketplace.
Okay.
That you can find the 4, unless they want exactly the same for with the exact same year, then you have a problem. But they say, I'm making a part that needs I'm making a part that's 3 inches by 3 inches. There's a bunch of different machines that could do that piece for them.
So what kind of machines are we looking at here that you've been able to kind of, I'll say, liquidate?
We say we do all industrial machinery.
Okay.
And that really is a broad term, but it's really what we do. So like last month, we've done a food processing plant. We've done a broaching company. We've done just a regular CNC shop. We've done plastic injection molders. So it really fits into everything's industrial.
Okay.
So for example, I guess our claim to fame is we sold Kanye West Donda house from his tour. And we were on TMZ, and then people say, is that industrial? It's industrial. It fits in the industrial marketplace. Because in our world, the assets, the process is the same each time. So you have to buy a SIC list. You have to figure out where the customers are. You write the equipment up correctly. You do the right marketing. The asset doesn't really change this process. It just changes who the end buyer will be. So we can really sell any asset because our marketing team has the knowledge to make it work.
So where's your footprint? Meaning, so we're here in Detroit. Obviously, you work with a lot of customers here. Where else are you reaching to either find?
So we're all over North America, but we do sometimes travel overseas. Most of the time overseas customers are people who are local, who have plants in other countries. We're not chasing other countries' work. So for an example, we did a huge project for Ford in Cologne, Germany. They had a process here, and they said, we have a plant closing in Cologne, not the whole plant, but we have assets in Cologne, Germany. You want to bid on it? Yes. We got on a plane, we went and processed, and we won the process. A story probably was Oxford Automotive. They had a plant in France and in Germany, and they needed some appraisal help there, and we went over there to help them in those projects. But again, they were local here, chasing there.
So I think one thing we failed to acknowledge is you started this business on your own, correct?
So I'm technically a fourth generation in the business. I worked with my family. They sold the company in 2001 to a larger company that was going public. That company never went public. We went our separate ways. I rejoined my cousin. And in 2009, I decided it was time to start my own company. So in 2009, we started Levy Recovery Group.
Okay, that's really cool. And so how has the process been to grow and build Levy Recovery Group after being in the industry for a long time?
So we really started more of, our tagline is complete asset solutions, which I always tell people, it always sounds like a corny way of saying it, but it's really true. So we saw the market before 2020. We were more of doing machinery buying and helping customers resolve their issues. Since 2020, we now see the market needs more of an auctioneer, so that we've switched that way into our company. So we really, because our timing is really, our solution to the problem is really what the customer is looking for. For example, sometimes timing is more important than money. Sometimes money is more important than timing. Sometimes the banks need it done quicker. Sometimes they need the money up front. We really help them come up with a game plan that makes sense for everyone.
So, and I think one thing that, just knowing you in the Detroit marketplace, you're well known. It seems like everyone in this industry knows each other to some aspect. Is that a safe assumption?
Correct. I always tell people, today's my friend, tomorrow you're my enemy. There's sometimes we've been a project and we're bidding 2 projects together, and then the next project we're bidding against each other. And it just, again, it depends on the size of the project, how much capital needs to be put out, if it makes sense. Sometimes people are better than one. Sometimes one is the same, and then we don't need a partner.
And how well aware are manufacturers of this solution as far as like, hey, let's talk to Jason. Jason's my guy. Or everybody else in the marketplace? Or it's just, hey, we're filing for bankruptcy, or we're trying to get rid of this machine?
I think some companies are very well in the process, and they have their person and they understand the process, and some do not. Some are, as I said, are last minute. They call you and they say, I have 2 weeks to get rid of this machine. Find me a buyer and I need top dollar. Why didn't you call me a month ago, 2 months ago? You knew this was happening. And they say, I didn't think about it, or I had other things on my plate, or I had other things that I had to get done. I always tell people, a lot of people start with 10 things on their list every day. They get through 5, and the next day they start back to number 1. If you're 8, 9, or 10 on the list, you never get called until it becomes the top 5.
That's a pretty critical asset. It's capital tied to a machine. Let's say it's $50,000 or something that's on your balance sheet.
Correct, but a lot of these guys, their main goal is making the product that pays the bills. So their number one product is make a car part, make food, make what they're making. Getting rid of that asset is not their, it's not on their priority list or not what they know well. They know how to make parts. That's why they're in business.
Yeah.
So they focus. Most manufacturers are focused on that part of the equation until it is forced on them.
So something I want to bring Brad in with his banking expertise. What is the cost of inaction on those assets if you just let it sit?
I mean, you're going to lose value, because it's not like a collectible car that goes up in value. Every day that asset loses value. You're going to pay taxes on it, and you're going to lose lost opportunity to fill it with work. Because a lot of times plants keep machining and playing. They go, we might win a project 2 years from now, so we need it. Why don't you go get the machine today that you can go get the job for that could fill the need today?
I think another thing too is that piece of equipment, it may be in the middle of the floor. It may be taking up space to take capacity of a new piece of equipment.
Correct.
Right? Or it's moving it around to get it out. And we kind of talked about, hey, this thing's been sitting idle, make it gone. Oh yeah, and by the way, we're closing to move out of the property in 2 weeks, right? So
My lease is up. It happens a lot where you get a call and they say, my lease is up in 6 weeks, 8 weeks. I need everything out.
So it's not like college where we just leave the couch at the apartment, right? Can't do that? Can't do that?
I actually threw my couch out the window.
That's what I was gonna say,
I was on the third floor. Me and my dad go, I can't carry this down. We chucked it out the window.
Right.
Let's go back to the mature days of burning a couch. We always wanted to do that, but it's definitely not legal. We don't advise doing that for the young kids. So, and from a bank standpoint, if you have a machine that's just sitting there, like what we're going to need it eventually, it's not producing revenue. From a bank's, how does a bank view that as an asset?
I mean, it is collateral, right? So a lot of time we'll file an all asset filing. We may take a specific lien on it, but if it's, as he says, it's depreciating every single day. But it's also not creating good capacity, that it's not an asset producing piece. So in the mindset of an owner, hey, if it's not making me money and I may not need it, let's get rid of it. And I think that's where you can engage Jason here in order to try to help.
One of the biggest problems I see with the larger companies, they save the machinery for later use, but they don't have a good system in place to know that piece is even there. So they move it to a warehouse that stores equipment for a later date, and they say, who is the list of all what's here? And they're like, I don't have a list. And like, then how do you know that piece? So for an example, we were walking for Ford Motor Company. We were walking the Highland Park plant, and they had tags on there that said, "Save for Brad, save for Matt." And finally, I looked at the buyer and I said, "Well, does Matt still work here?" And we Googled it. He was dead for 5 years, but no one knew because it said "Save for Matt," and no one questioned it. So at some point, they're like, "We got to do an inventory of what's actually here and get a good list." And some companies do a very well job of that. So what happens? They not only put them in a database, but it's only as good as the information you give. Sometimes it says, I have a Minster number 300 ton press with this bed size, blah, blah, blah. Then someone can find it. Other times you see it where they say, press. You go, there's a $2 million cost of this. It's got to be better than just a press. But they don't. The person putting it in, that wasn't part of their job that was important to them.
So you have the piece of equipment, it's been buried for 5 years, but it's, it has seals, it has oil, all that is just deteriorating,
Correct.
right? So, hey, it's been sitting there for a while. How much money do I got to put back into this thing to get it back up? It may be at a point where, you know what, it's a lost cause. Let's just go buy.
Which 90% of the time, that's what happens. Is by the time they realize they need that piece, they say, "Oh no, I have to go get it refurbed or refit." And by the time they do that, it's easier to go buy a used one.
Still get parts for it.
Still get parts for it. Correct.
How common do businesses, as you mentioned, they're focused on producing parts, that's their cash flow piece, they don't want to liquidate this potential machine. How common is it that happens where they don't adequately manage inventory in that way?
I would say most companies do not manage their machinery inventory correctly. Again, they wait till the last minute to do it instead of doing a correct process.
It's interesting.
Because if you have something very specialized, when I said it might take 6 or 8 weeks, it could really take, if it's really specialized, it could take 6 months. Why not put it on the market today and say, hey, there's a machine for sale 6 months from now if you need it. The guy who's gonna need that might need 6 month lead time to win a project, figure out if he needs it, and then make the process a lot easier if we could liquidate early. But again, a lot of times it's not on their checklist till the last minute.
And there's so many specific projects. Let's say automotive, for example, you have a very specific machine, and like to implement the tooling for a new project and things like that. Is that a pretty common thing you come across?
So 10 years ago and older, people would buy a machine and say, I know I'm gonna need this the next 6 months, I'll buy it. Because it's for sale now, it might not be available for sale in 6 months from now. But now, more people are only buying for project specific. I'm only buying this if I need it. I don't buy anymore for speculation. I mean, there's dealers out there who buy for speculation. A dealer says, okay, I know this is worth 100 grand. I'll give you 30 today, hold it for a year, and then sell it for the 100. Those guys exist. But the actual end user, you should do that too. Say, okay, if I can buy it for 30, and I need to buy 100 for it in a year, I'll pay for it now. That doesn't happen anymore. Those guys are out there saying, I'm only buying for project specific. I need this to fill this project.
So they're waiting on, I have the contract in hand.
Yeah.
Now let's go procure that equipment piece to do it instead of speculating.
Right.
It ties up cash flow, right?
100%.
I'm paying interest on a piece of equipment that isn't producing me money yet.
It's the what if. And there's brokers, I'm sure, that buy up equipment when there's a need. Hey, I have this machine, hypothetically, and I'm sure they're full of cash flow. If there's companies that just buy up inventory of machines, if there's a potential future need for it.
Correct. The answer really is how much cheaper you can get to the reward. So there's always a number for that, right?
Yeah, 100%.
No matter how much money you have to pay, if there's enough reward, it's worth it. I always call it's almost like gambling, but we really know what we're doing. It might take, so I always say, we might take 2 or 3 years once you buy as a dealer to buy something and sell it. But if the reward's worth it, you get triple or quadruple your money, why not do that?
And that probably comes from somebody that's been in the industry for a long time, knowing the value of a machine, if it's actually resellable or not.
Correct.
Yeah.
The risk is if something changes in the market. For example, if you had a bunch of crankshaft mills or spline rollers and we're going to the EV world, those are going to be less valuable. But we know there's still going to be combustible engines, so it's not going to be zero.
It's an interesting story with this transition to EV, and now the demand for EV is going down. There's a lot of companies that are very combustion engine focused. They're back to cash flowing again, so it could be a push to that exact reason.
Correct.
Let's go, hey, we need this machine again. Have you seen that recently, or?
We have not seen a big uptake yet, but I expect it coming soon because a lot of people are realizing that EV may not be the answer. I'm not saying it's not going to be the answer in the future.
Yeah.
It's not going to be the answer today.
The-
And even if it is the answer today, by the time they get enough EV cars to fill the marketplace, we're talking 30, 40 years from now. It's not going to happen 5 years like they were saying before.
The immediate need is, hey, we need to focus on what cash flow is the immediate need versus a hypothetical in the future.
Correct.
I think that's the common sense thing that a lot of people are agreeing. EVs are great, but is it viable next year or 5 years from now?
Sat in a presentation this week and they talked about how, GM is like, we're all in on electric and now they're pivoting back to ICE, right?
Yeah.
So you have a lot of these suppliers that went out and bought a bunch of EV equipment with the hope that everything's going to transition to it. So now there's a lot of this capital that's been invested into this equipment that may not come to fruition in the next 2 to 5 years, but yet there's debt out on it. So it's tying up on their cash flow. So have you seen any EV equipments coming in your way yet?
So Ford Motor Company had a bunch of equipment that was EV related. They just recently sold. ZF had just a bunch of EV equipment that just sold. I think there's going to be a lot of it in the next 2 to 3 years of EV equipment. That the problem we're having is that there's still too much book value, and they're afraid to take the losses, so they can't liquidate it as much as they would like, and they also want to see what's going to look like in 2 to 3 years.
So who's buying it? If Ford's selling it, who's buying it?
Either guys who are smaller, who are going to, so Ford Motor Company wants to make, I'm making up numbers, 10 million 1 million EV cars a year. They might sell to a guy who only wants to make 100. Because when Ford bought it, they paid $2 million a machine. So you got to produce a lot of cars to get your $2 million back. But if a small guy buys that same EV machine, CNC machine, for $100,000, you might get your money back if you only sell 100 cars a year. So the price point has changed because instead of spending, let's say there's 4 machines, instead of spending $6 million for it, the guy only paid $400,000 for it, or $1 million. The break-even number becomes a lot lower in the equation.
It's the infamous, I bought a new car, drove it off the lot, and lost half the value.
Right.
And this guy, smaller supplier, gets it at a cheap discount. Now he can make a better margin if it fits better for his smaller order.
And what he might think is a reward, a benefit, is not going to be to Ford. So for an example, if he takes those 4 machines and make $100,000, say he makes $1 million a year in profit, he might go home and thinks he hit a home run. The $1 million to Ford is just going to say, why are we wasting energy here? I'd rather go try to make 10 million or 100 million, whatever the number is that they need.
I know those are hypothetical numbers, which for the purpose of this, we're not talking real numbers, but are you seeing a decreased valuation in the EV machines as far as the resale marketplace?
I mean, right now we are seeing that because, again, the demand's not out there.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people are afraid of the process of where it looks like in 2 years. There's a lot of companies who spend a lot of money, tens and 20, 100 million getting ready for the EV world. That's not happening.
And they're almost forced to
either sell or hold until they can see what the market looks like, right? Because the worst thing would be them if they sold it today, and a year from now the EV market picks back up. But without the tax breaks that the government's giving, I don't see that market going up any faster than it already is.
So for context, we met at Turnaround Management Association, the local group here in Detroit. So how frequently in turnarounds do you get brought in as far as liquidation? Because liquidation isn't only a turnaround or a bankruptcy, it's also older machines. How frequently is a turnaround when you get involved?
I don't know the percentage. It's not a very high percentage.
Okay.
Because most of those guys, turnaround management guys, their job is to turn it around and either sell as an ongoing business or fix it and keep it running. A lot of our opportunities are either ones who the EBITDA doesn't fit the equipment, where we find out the equipment and real estate is actually worth more than the company as a whole. Even with an EBITDA that's good, if you have enough value in the equipment and the machinery and the building, you can sell more for that. Or a lot of times if they realize, let's say they have 4 plants and there's a lot of redundants, they might sell off one of the 4 plants and keep three running because it can serve all of their customers, but they don't need the 4th plant. Especially if that 4th plant is sitting in a not ideal world compared to the other 3. A lot of times you go and plan, they're like, there's 3 in North Carolina and 1 in California. You're like, why is there 1 in California? Well, that was our competitor that we just bought, and we really wanted their customer base more than we wanted the equipment. Let's liquidate California and keep the 3 from North Carolina running.
I think that's a very real example that I see quite a bit. So just the big idea is operationally, do we really need this actual physical location? And I think with Turnaround Management Association, it's really operations focused than it is the actual equipment from conversations we've had. So overall, what's the lesson that you've learned being in the business for a long time, both as an owner and then just the marketplace and altogether?
One of the main things I've learned recently is we have to be more strict with our clients and help, because they don't know the process. They always think they know what the process is. You have to help them get through the process correctly. Decisions they make may or may not affect drastically. So you gotta make sure we're the professionals to help them make the decisions correctly. Sometimes their thought process is what they've been told by someone else who's not an expert. Just like I always tell people, if you're selling a house, you can sell your house by yourself. There's a reason why there's a realtor there. They know the process. They know what to look for. They know what needs to be signed. Important to go to a professional for whatever you're trying to accomplish, because they know what's going to happen or not happen. Because so many times what happens is you tell someone what's going to happen, they don't believe you. You go down the road, and then you find out later that, yep, I knew what was going to happen.
Such a common theme, because we're all professionals. We are involved. We're in this day to day, and we say it, and everyone's stubborn. Like, I got this. Like, all right, well, just so you know, I'm here. This is what's going to likely happen, and it happens. So I think you can speak to that as well, can't you, in banking?
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. Every day I feel like we're being an advisor to our customers, as you kind of said. It's, we've seen examples of, I know how to run my business, don't tell me how to do it, right? But it's like, No, and that was one of the things I wanted to kind of spin it to you is it's like, you walk into a plant, you see the equipment that they have that they're looking to, dispose of or get rid of. Everything that someone owns is more than what the value is, right?
Correct.
So I know that it's $3 billion. But when you walk in, you have a better idea. As an expert, you know how much the market will hold for these pieces of equipment.
Brian, I'm glad you brought that up because I'm amazed how many times people make business decisions without calling the expert in first. For an example, I go walk into a plant, they go, we just happened to us a couple months ago. A guy calls us and says, my dad just sold his building and he thinks it's too much work. We're just gonna give all the equipment to the new buyer. We said, let's come look and see what's there. And there was like 200 grand in value. And so our team got in quickly, ran a really quick process, had everything out in 3 weeks. We got them $150,000 to $200,000 on that project. And I'm like, how did you make that decision? And the father said, my gut. Why not call an expert and figure out what, or other times where a guy says, I'm gonna store this machine because I know it's gonna be impossible to find one. And you go, there's 4 on the market right now, and they're not that expensive if you do need one. Why store it and pay the rent on something that's very easy to find? So a lot of times people make these decisions, and I can't figure out how they don't call an expert in to say, what is this worth? Oh, it's worth this. Change it. If it's worth $5 grand, let's just scrap it. I don't want to wait 3 years to let's say $5 grand. If I say it's worth 200 grand, now it's worth waiting 2 months to figure out if you get to 200 grand.
Do you get involved with M&A? So like, the son or, the dad owns the business, the son's trying to move to a plant, or maybe they're just trying to sell the business to a third party. Do you get involved sometimes with M&A, or is that an area you kind of would love to get into? Get involved with just in case that new owner may or may not want that piece of equipment.
No, we're brought in, not as much as I would like. I think you're right.
It's after the fact.
No, it's before sometimes too.
Okay.
Where they're asking for our opinion. Or there's times where they're looking to decide what a fair price is for the equipment to the equation. So we do have an appraisal team that can do an appraisal for a guy or a company to make it work.
Okay.
But again, a lot of times we work with a lot of like accounting firms who bring us in to have that conversation. My clients think about selling. What do you think? Or we have a lot of investment bankers who call us in and say, here's what the company's worth based on EBITDA. It's worth whatever. What is it worth the equipment if I just sell it off? And a lot of times those two numbers don't make sense because they say, wait, why don't we just sell the equipment? That happened to us recently where the investment banker was trying to sell the company. And I said, I can get you double that in just the equipment part. Because the EBITDA wasn't equal to the value of the equipment. And so we did the liquidation. We got them the value they wanted. And everyone was happy at the end of the day because they got more money than they thought they were going to get selling it just based on sales and company value.
As an investment banker, how common is that they just look at EBITDA versus the actual valuation process of machinery?
I think it's very common. They do not look at the machinery part of the equation.
Okay.
They just look at the EBITDA of the equation and say, I'm giving you 4 times EBITDA or whatever, obviously based on the industry, what their multiplier is.
And to be fair to them too, they want the transaction to happen, but that's another step in the process. But I think that's a fair bet. It's like, hey, let's get somebody in just to look at this to further validate this valuation.
Or at least give them a bottom.
Yeah.
Maybe that multiplier of the EBITDA is higher, but at least you know what the guy comes in with low balls, you say, no, I'm good. We know bottom is going to be $1 million.
Yeah.
They may be out of 3 or 4, but at least they know the $1 million is the bottom to the equation.
I think that's a really good point. What do you want everyone that's listening to know, and how can we as a listening base help you out?
I would say the most important thing is that before you make a decision on your machinery, call an expert who can at least give you advice on what to do with it. Again, if it's scrap, let's just scrap and move on. Don't waste a lot of your company time and effort doing it. But if it's worth money, and get them in as early as possible so you can make your business decision.
Okay.
So that'd be my number one, because that way at least you're educated, at least you know that your decisions you're making are based on facts and not gut feel.
And I think just trust experts in their field. They don't know your business, but they know their industry expertise.
And more, I guess really important is also bring them in a timely manner. Bring them in early, even if it's too early. It's better to be early than late. Be honest with your expert. A lot of times people don't give you the facts that are correct. They feel what you want to hear. For an example, what I mean by that, are there any liens on this equipment? Oh no, we have no liens. Oh, then my team does a search. You know, we had one project where there was a lien on top of a lien on top of a lien. The guy had 3 liens on the same machine. And I said, that changes the equation drastically. And I go, what do you mean? I go, you can't sell it. He goes, what do you mean? The 3 liens say you owe $400,000 on a $200,000 machine. I can't sell a machine that's only worth $200,000 if you have $400,000 worth of liens against it. And the point is, be honest. A lot of times they do not tell us the full facts of the equation. Like we had one recently where we were trying to sell a machine, and the guy was asking some stupid number. And afterwards, I finally said, I got in the room, what my book value is too high. Tell me that. We've been working on this project for 2 months. Tell me that up front, and we could have come up with a different game plan, as in what it needs to be, than where we are today. Because if you don't tell me the facts, I can't give you the solution that makes the most sense.
Yeah, that was kind of the point I was going to make. It's like, why is this guy so hell-bent on having a value of this piece of equipment at this value? Because he has a lien on it. He's got debt on it. So he has
which is fine. But at least tell me that up front. And then at that point, we can decide if it makes sense.
You can make a little money here, lose a little bit.
But if you have a machine that has, again, a $400,000 lien, and it's only worth $200,000, there's no reason for the process is not going to work. There's nothing I can do to solve those $200,000 swing, unless you're going to write a check to make, or what we can do is talk to the banker, and maybe the banker is willing to take a lesser number to get his money out because he knows he's in a loss for the project. But without telling me that, I can't call the banker. I can't make a decision that makes the most sense for people.
Anytime that things are being sold, whether it be in a business, equipment, like in your space, there's always a level of emotion. We tell everyone, hey, this is your blood, sweat, and tears as a business. If you sell, you may think your business is worth $10 million, which in all fairness, it's your blood, sweat, and tears. But once you sell objectively, someone may value it at like $1 million. So I think having third parties come in, look at things objectively, and I think we can speak to this all together. It's a very real reality. Removing the emotions to it is pretty critical, and being transparent.
But like you said, about being emotional, because a lot of these people have spent their whole life, they spend more time with their business than they do with their family. And it's not even close, right? You put 50 or 60 hours a week in awake time. You don't spend 50 or 60 hours a week with your family awake. And so they become really attached to it. And again, like you said, it makes them feel more of a emotion than they are about what reality is.
Yeah, this business is worth this machine is worth $200,000. Absolutely, I paid $300.
Correct.
It's like, well, there's this issue, that issue. Like, I respect it, but
You know, with a business owner, like you said, you've put your blood, sweat, and tears into it too. You got to keep in mind, like, that's the retirement. That's all they have. They may not have a retirement. The retirement was, I hope to sell this business one day. And that's why I can see why they're trying to maximize value. But again, get the expert in, let them give you a true market value of the equipment, and don't have this giant idea of, oh, my stuff's worth hundreds of millions of dollars.
What a lot of times I tell people is, when the expectations are where it should be, your reality is reality. So for example, if I'm selling this table and I tell you it's gonna bring $100 and it brings 75, you tell me that I don't know what I'm talking about. If I'm selling the same table and I tell you it's worth 50 and it brings 75, you tell me I'm a genius. But the same table is saying 75. But if you know what you're gonna up front, it changes the equation of what's happening. You don't have a high goal of, I'm gonna get 5 million, you only get 1 million. Now you can't. Now you should not retire because now you don't have enough money to retire on. But if you knew the 1 million before you made that decision, you can then go to your accountant and say, if I get 1 million for my business, is that enough for me to retire on? And they can give you the facts, right? If you go to the accountant and say, I'm gonna retire, how much do you have? I don't know, my equipment's worth what? I don't know, 3 million. You should retire. That only brings 1 million. Now that changes your retirement equation drastically.
Absolutely, and I think in closing, all of us are in this business for a reason. Trusted advisors. We're not gonna say something completely incorrect to make somebody mad. We're like, this is the reality. Like, if I go to marketplace to try to sell this for you, this is what's gonna happen. I'm gonna try to get better than that, but I'm being realistic with what's going to happen objectively. I think we can all relate to that as far as sometimes it's great, sometimes it's not as great as desirable, but at the same time, we're being honest in the conversation. Thank you, Jason. Really, really appreciated your time. You have some great insights to bring to the marketplace. So if anyone is in the space where they want to bring in somebody like Jason, I highly recommend you spend time with him. And as he mentioned, just stay ahead of it and plan appropriately. I think it's very critical to do. So
Thank you guys for both having me. I really enjoyed the conversation today.
Thanks.
thank you, Jason.
We'll talk later.